Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and today I'm going to try demonstrate why having super aggressive load line, or more like no load line, is a terrible idea. So we're on a Maximus XI Gene here. This is not a retail Maximus XI Gene, this is my modified version of it. It kind of does slightly better on transient response, like slightly. It's not as much of an improvement as I wish it was, but that kind of makes sense because the gene is like the thing is the gene is supposed to be like second to only the Apex in terms of ERM design from Asus. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that it's not like that. Yours truly couldn't make much of a difference to its VRM performance, considering that Asus obviously put a lot of time and effort into this board. Anyway, so we're set to 1.29 volts right now. We're on my 87 on the Probinator 8700, which is a modified 8700K, so that I have coax running directly to the power planes of the CPU. We are looking at the oscilloscope here. This is a 20 megahertz bandwidth. The scope is a DS1054Z from Rigol, but I do have all of the different software options unlocked, so yeah, it's fully featured. Anyway, so we're at 5.15 gigahertz, which, yeah, this chip is kind of insane, as I realized, the more I've been testing this chip, the more I realize this is, I've used the wrong chip for this. I should have used my 8086K, because my 8086K sucks. But this thing is an absolute beast of a CPU. Anyway, so right now, yeah, we have it on level 8 LLC, 1.29 volts, so we're going to be getting about 1.3 volts. I think Asus actually has like a little offset programmed with the level 8 LLC, because like we're idling on 1.31 volts, and at idle, the oscilloscope measurement is actually really close to the die measurement, because you're not pushing a ton of current into the chip, so there's not a lot of voltage drop across the power plane of the substrate, which is where I'm measuring from. So, yeah. Anyway, so we're just going to go into Windows, and we're going to run some Prime 95, yeah, we're going to run 16K, we're going to run 128K, and then I'm going to go back into the BIOS. We're going to run level 5 LLC with 1.44 volts instead of 1.29 set volts, and you're going to see how much more stable it is. So, yeah, anyway, I need to get my timer here. And unfortunately, like, this video is really experimental for me, because, like, this is a kind of awkward thing to demonstrate, in my opinion. But, is Prime 95 up? CPU-Z. CPU-Z, we're using CPU-Z because on Asus motherboards, the Super I/O has, there's an operational, there's an op-amp between the die sense of the CPU. Well, they have an op-amp that basically replicates the die sense voltage to the Super I/O, so the Super I/O isn't completely useless like it is on most motherboards. But basically, CPU-Z voltage readings on most motherboards completely trash. You can completely, like, you should just ignore them. Asus motherboards get around that with the op-amp that they have. So, anyway, let's run custom. Well, we're going to start with 16K, right? Because 16K runs hot, and I want to show that our voltage is where it's supposed to be in terms of, like, voltage reading over here. So yeah, you can see like we're set to 1.29 in the BIOS, and the CPU-Z is idling on 1.305. So like Asus has like a 10 millivolt offset or something on that. And also, it's worth noting that the actual voltage, like the Super I/O, I think it has like a 12 millivolt resolution or something. Like, it's awful. So basically, it can measure like 1.296 or 1.305. It can't actually display 1.3 because I'm pretty sure that's not like it's not within the measurement range of the Super I/O. Anyway, so we're just going to run 16K, fixed size. So that, because the thing is, if you don't have fixed size, then it loads cycles, and I don't like that because that makes things inconsistent. So we're going to start that, and we're going to time how long it takes before we start getting threads crashing. I started the stopwatch, and it should take a couple of seconds. Like, it really shouldn't take long because these settings are pretty borderline. Also, I'm just going to rescale the scope. You can see that our minimums are like 1.28 volts. We've still not lost a thread yet. Well, it's only 17 seconds, so that's not surprising. So yeah, 1.28. Oh, we lost a thread already. There we go. So that was about 25 seconds before we lost the thread. Right, and the whole thing just went down. So yeah, and the thing to note is like our minimums were in that 1.2 volts range. 1.28, 1.27-ish. Or at least that's where they should be, considering my test data from past it, like from like today morning. Yeah, I stayed up all night testing. Actually, no, we want to go all the way to Windows again. I don't want to go into the BIOS, because I also want to show you 128K Prime 95. So, yeah, 16K is supposed to be, yeah, around 1.29 volts minimum. And you were seeing that, right? 1.28, 1.29. So the voltage was dropping really low. And that's the transient, basically, from the Windows event timer. That's those big, tall spikes that we were seeing. Because basically the Windows kernel ticks, and it periodically updates, and it's like 15.625 milliseconds for the updates. So, yeah, this way, I'm going to bring the trigger in. There. These spikes right here, that's the Windows timer. We zoom in on one of those. Quite horrible, because basically the CPU, so this is idle. CPU suddenly needs to do something, and this is the VRM basically freaking out, overcompensating, and then we go back to idle. So this is not good. Well, we don't really care about the overshoot. This down here, the minimum voltage, that's a concern, because that's a stability hazard. That's what causes the CPU to crash when we run Prime 95. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to zoom back out. A lot. The trigger out of the way, because I don't actually want it triggered. And we're going to do 128K Prime 95, because that should last about 30-ish seconds. It's a little bit less hot, but much, much noisier. Actually, not a little bit less hot. It is much less hot, but much, much noisier. And what I mean by that is, like, so right now we're sitting idle, and you just see sort of like, you know, big events that the CPU has to take care of, popping up periodically. Here it goes. And that's what 128K looks like. So I'm just going to set the timer. Timer's running now. Still have all our threads. I expect it to crash around 35 seconds in. I'm just going to reset the scale. But you can see our minimums are in the 1.24 volts range. Oh, and we already lost a thread. That was quick. But we'll just keep waiting. But you can see that our minimums are like 1.24 volts. Our, you know, software voltage reading is 1.3. Our average voltage is 1.37. And yeah, we're losing threads. We should lose another one sometime. Oh, there we go. Another one just dropped, and you can see that, like, it's not running anymore. So, oh man, we are losing a lot of threads now. Yeah, so 128K, very, very noisy. The end result is that it just causes much larger, like, the minimum voltage is much lower, and so it actually causes more instability issues. This is also why, like, you can't just use one stress test to go like, oh, it's stable, because if you find something that's like a relatively consistent load, then your VRM will actually probably have a really easy time dealing with it, and then you'll run something which might not be as hot, but really, really inconsistent and causing massive transients, and that'll crash your system. So anyway, we'll restart, because that didn't last 30 seconds. So yeah, very, very unstable. And keep in mind, like, our minimum voltages are really, really low. Like, that's the main issue, is our minimum voltage is really, really low. So, now I'm going to dial in a bunch of settings where we're still going to be getting the same average voltage of around 1.37 volts under full load, but we're going to be have much higher minimums, and so our stability is going to be much better. But our temperatures are going to be the same. Like, the only real concern is that you're going to be idling on more voltage, which, well, as long as you don't set, like the thing is like, don't set and say, like, you can't, like, basically there's an upper limit to how far you can push this, and this is where I would consider, like, a good stopping point, like 1.44, 1.45 volts, maybe, just maybe. If you set level 5 LLC, because level 5 LLC is actually really quite droopy. So we're going to just set that and restart. And immediately, you know, at low loads, we have a bunch more voltage. And, you know, that looks bad, and yeah, our idle efficiency is slightly affected, but eh. The thing is, the CPU doesn't pull, or, like, the thing is, if the CPU is idling, it's not really pulling much power in the first place, so it's not really a concern, right? Like, a 10% increase from 10 watts is 1 watt. So I just don't care. Yeah, it actually is around 10%, because we're going from 1.3 to around 1.44, right? So that's about 10%. So yeah, 10% more voltage, which actually would give us about 20% more power draw. But, you know, still, like, if you're idling on 10 watts, well, now you're idling on 12. Who cares? So we're just going to get CPU Z open, Prime 95, core temp, small FFTs, and then we're going to go custom, and we're going to run 16K, and it's not going to crash. Like, I'm only going to run it for like a minute because you all probably don't want to sit here forever. So, because I don't actually know if it does crash. I've not seen it crash yet, so that's the thing. At 5.15, at 5.2 it'll eventually crash, but at 5.15 it doesn't, so... Or at least I've not run it for long enough to see it crash yet. So we're going to go. I'm going to set that. Well, it's probably... I'm not going to sit here for 5 minutes, but there we go. And so notice how our minimums are now like 1.33, 1.32 volts range. Our average voltage is still 1.37. Our software voltage in CPU-Z is 1.296. And... you know, I'm running the stopwatch. All of our workers are running, and they're still running, and they're going to keep running because, yeah, our minimum voltages are now a lot better because the VRM is actually, like, this is basically the VRM is sort of in sync with the physical capabilities of its inductors and its power plane and its capacitors. To actually regulate the voltage. Because the thing is, the load line was originally invented by Intel as a, like, basically it exists because you can't actually make a switching buck, like a switching regulator like you have on a motherboard, so the VRM on a motherboard, you can't build one that's going to have perfect transient response. It's not possible. Like, you're always going to have a difference between your average voltage and your minimum voltage, and the thing is, like, even if we weren't using a switching regulator, the CPU puts out a whole bunch of switching noise. Like this, all of these spikes, that's the CPU doing that. That's not from the VRM, that's from the CPU. So the thing with that is that because the CPU makes all of this lovely switching noise, trying to have your voltage regulator, like, counteract that doesn't really lead anywhere because it's too far away and it can't do anything about it. So Intel was like, well, we can't really, like, we can just let the voltage drop down to the same level that it would drop on its own, right? Or close enough to that. And you're going to get better voltage regulation out of it, basically. Like, you're going to use less power. You're still going to have the same amount of stability because your minimum voltage doesn't actually change. It's still the same. And, you know, like, that's basically it. It's just like, instead of, because right now, if we had no Vdroop, right? We'd be sitting at 1.44 volts, but our minimums would still be very close to that 1.3 something range. So that's why it doesn't make sense to not have any Vdroop, right? So anyway, it's been 2 minutes now. Really? That's been 2 minutes? That doesn't feel like 2 minutes. I have a really bad sense of time. So yeah, as you can clearly see, this isn't going to be crashing anytime soon. So we're going to stop that. And yeah, our voltage immediately comes back up. Then we're going to run the torture test, small FFTs, custom, and we're going to punch in 128. That's not 128. 28. 128. 15. Bam. Oh, and I broke Prime 95. So there's a bug on this operating system where if you, like, hit enter or something, like, there's something I do on that Windows install, and it just breaks Prime 95 when I do that. So, yeah, sorry about that. We're going to have to restart it. But, yeah, so 16K, obviously far more stable than when we had the level 8 LLC, with all of that undershoot, right? Because we're getting, like, 40, 30 millivolts more minimum voltage than if you had level 8 LLC with the same average voltage. And the average voltage is kind of what, like, affects your degradation. The minimum voltage is what really dictates your stability, right? So it doesn't make sense to run a whole bunch of... like, it just doesn't make sense to use, like, a level 8 or a level 7, or even a level 6 LLC for that matter. Like, level 6 already has a disadvantage, like, a measurable disadvantage over level 4. I mean, level 5 that we're using right now. So, yeah. And then level 4 has, like, level 4 is, it's not great as far as I'm concerned. Like, it doesn't really give you a huge voltage regulation advantage compared to level 5. And I'm actually going to be doing... voltage, like I'm going to be doing similar, well, I'm gathering data for this for a bunch of other motherboards, but it's just like, this is a really nice proof of concept. Like, yeah, you can see that our minimums are higher, and as you saw, 16K Prime 95 was much, much more stable than it was when I was running the same average voltage, right? Like, that's the thing. I mean, you probably want to go back to the video to see the oscilloscope stuff, because, Yeah, well, I can't really, like, I don't edit, and part of that also is just, like, I don't know how to plan videos, so it's just, like, we'll just do it live and hope that it works out. Not the best approach to producing content, but, it works well enough for me. So anyway, let's get core temp up, prime 95, and, right, that is so stupid. This CPU Z-skin is kind of annoying to select. Okay, we're going to go custom, 128, 128, and bam. And again, you can just see how our minimums, like, they're not great. They're lower than what we had in 16K Prime 95, but they're still significantly higher than what we had at level 8 LLC. And we are averaging actually a higher voltage. So this is like, the thing is, our minimums here are mostly better because our average voltage is up, but we're still, you know, at 1.34 volts on the actual die sense. So that's a safe voltage to run. Okay, like, that's not an unsafe voltage for the CPU to be at. And our minimums are much higher, so our stability is much better. So, you know, nice and simple. And yes, our temperatures are higher as a side effect of this, but, you know, the thing is, if you wanted to achieve this level of stability with, like, level 8 LLC, you'd have to also crank up the voltage. So the fact that our temperatures right now are higher is just like, well, they would be high, like, the level 8 test was crashing, so that doesn't count as stable. So yeah, it's just like the temperature difference is, as far as I'm concerned, is irrelevant, because the level 8 test wasn't really working. Because like, if I got it to the same stability, we'd probably be looking at the exact same average voltage of around 1.4 volts on the oscilloscope, and around 1.3. Actually, no, we'd be way above 1.32. We'd be at like 1. I'd expect it to end up at like 1.35, and that's the washing machine. Yeah, I did not time that out. I did not realize that would finish washing. I'm gonna go shut the damn thing up so that it doesn't keep beeping. Okay, I'm back. I mean, it is in the same room as me, because I have a small flat. Anyway, so yeah, you can see much more stable, right? Much more stable, better minimums, well, higher average voltage, but that's just a consequence of the load line. Like, the main thing with the average voltage is, like, you just don't want it so high that it would actually harm the CPU. And 1.4 volts, like, that's the like, this can be significantly high, like, because we're measuring behind the power plane resistance of the CPU substrate. Like, this is going to be reading higher voltages than what the CPU is actually getting, which is the core voltage in CPU Z. So, yeah, anyway, I think the point stands. Like, this is really stable, right? Like, before it was crashing, what, like 15 seconds in and it would die? And yeah, this isn't going anywhere. We've still not lost a worker. There's a pretty good chance that these settings are very, very stable. You know, we might be maybe 25 megahertz too high or something. So, in terms of CPU frequency, but I've not run this for more than a couple minutes, because I just wanted a really quick demonstration of, like, hey, if you set your LLC super high, your minimum voltage is gonna suck, even if your average voltage is gonna be the same, but your minimums are gonna suck, and so your stability is gonna suck, and so like, everything's gonna crash. So that's kind of the thing. So yeah, that's why we have Vdroop, because Vdroop is basically there to make the VRM not try to fight the laws of physics, because the VRM really can't do anything about the fact that the CPU is going to cause massive transients. So the best thing you can do is just tell the VRM to kind of go with whatever the CPU wants to do anyway. Because yeah, if you try to fight it, you're just going to end up with a VRM. That's where you get, like, a bunch of overshoot, because the VRM, you know, is desperately trying to get the voltage back up to where it's supposed to be, but that's not going to actually work out. So then it's going to overshoot, and then it's going to be like, oh no, now we need to pull it back down. And so potentially you're going to get a bunch of undershoot, and everything just kind of sucks as a side effect, as a result of that. So yeah. Anyway, hopefully this gets the point across. I kind of wanted this video to be shorter than my usual, you know, 40 plus minutes, and we are getting to 20 minutes right now. So yeah, hopefully this covers what, like, hopefully this makes sense, right? So yeah, and we are running, like, this is option, wait, where is it? Yeah, this is Prime 95 version 29.4, so this is like AVX everything. So, yeah, this is about as AVX heavy as it gets. Man, it's still not crashing. I'm impressed. Anyway, so, yeah, that's it for the video. So, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comments section below. And if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon where you can support me directly. There's a link to that down in the description below. And if you don't like Patreon, then I do have a Teespring store with a bunch of like AHOC merch. So there's shirts, there's stickers, there's posters, there's socks, I think there's like one hoodie. There's probably going to be more hoodies because Teespring is finally like rolling out zipper hoodies, and it's like, I like zipper hoodies. So basically a lot of the merch is designed like, would I wear this? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably going to become a merch item. Yeah, anyway, so that's it for this video. I'm not going to be doing another demonstration like this with any other motherboards because I'm just going to be... Like, I have a really synthetic way of gathering all of this data in a format that, like, works as far as, like, because here, like, this is a demonstration of the theory reflects reality, right? Like, our stability is better if we have more droop, but a higher set volt. Like, if our average voltage is the same, but we have more droop enabled, then our stability is better. So that's the theory that this is supposed to prove. And I can just use synthetic data gathering methods for the rest of my testing, so I don't need to worry about like things like, because trying to get things to crash consistently is kind of annoying, and especially with some of the smaller differences between the LLC levels, it's just going to be like some LLC levels have like a 10 millivolt advantage over another LLC level, and it's just going to take forever to fit to prove that one is more stable than the other. So it's just like, nah, I'm just going to do it synthetically for those. So yeah, that's it for the video. If you want to support the channel, you know what to do. I already mentioned everything about that. That's down in the description. And yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye. Where's the... Oh, that's the wrong mouse. This mouse. Where is it? There it is. Goodbye.